Everybody is always in pursuit of growing their business to the next level. And sometimes it just doesn't feel great. It becomes heavy. It doesn't work the way you want it to. The money doesn't flow in like it should, especially if you've reached a level of success where you think you've locked into something that's working. And then the obvious next step is to go ahead and grow more. Only when you try to do that, you don't get the results that you expect. And it can be very frustrating. So this week, we have a very special guest and a very special announcement. I cannot wait to tell you about it. I'm here with Zen Jenn, who is my fractional CFO, strategist, bookkeeper that has completely transformed my life. And we're going to get into today the difference between growing for the sake of growth and growing because it makes actual sense. And sometimes some of the things that can get into the way and make it really difficult. So we're going to dive in. Hey, you leader, entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur, whatever you call yourself, we know you're a visionary business builder, wealth seeker looking to combine a passion for doing good with leading consciously. It's time to shift from a traditional focus of pure wealth accumulation to one that integrates well-being and fulfillment. You're here for a purpose, and it's time to shine your light. So here we go. Welcome back to the Conscious Edge podcast. I'm your host, Alicia St. Germain, founder of the Conscious Edge, where I help women entrepreneurs expand what they can hold financially, energetically, emotionally, so that they can grow sustainable businesses that feel great. Zen Jenn, as I like to call you, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So I told you were on in the springtime many episodes ago, and we'll link those here, but you've been on several times and your episodes are the most listened to episodes of the entire series.
That's so cool. I had no idea until you said that a little bit ago, and I was kind of mind blown. So that's awesome.
Well, what that tells me is that people are really craving those money talks that we were having. And I don't think it gets talked about enough. I think that there's a lot of people suffering silently with trying to feel like they've got a handle on their finances, at least enough to be compliant for filing taxes. And there's a lot of shame that people carry around finances, and they're really good at making money in their business and they have a passion for it. But for the business side of it, so many people are not really taught how to run the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're that bridge. I call Jenn, all of us within Jenn's circle call her a unicorn because she is this really beautiful combination of somebody who understands bookkeeping and the things that your books can tell you about your business if it's structured properly. And you've helped so many of my friends, and I know you do it with your clients, and you've made little tweaks to even things that people are doing with their own bookkeepers that make the information so much more usable.
Yeah.
I think is the right word. But then you understand business strategy and from a financial perspective and future planning and scenario running, which is like unheard of, that you don't often get people who have both, right?
Yeah, it is. But it's so fun. It's so fun to have both the technical side and then to be able to go play with it.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of joy of that for sure.
Yeah. So I think you actually said, I would be happy to come back on the podcast more. And I said, you know what we need to do? We need to do monthly money talks with Zen Jenn.
Which I love.
So, and then we call her Zen Jenn because Jenn has this way of making financials, approachable and easy to understand. You make everyone feel like they can figure it out, and so non-judgmental.
Yeah, that's so cool to hear.
If you are someone who carries shame about your numbers and your financials and how much of a mess things are, you can feel completely okay to be yourself because you've always told me and expressed to me, and I know that some of your clients, that just being willing to like take that step to make things better is like you embrace that, right?
Absolutely. It's huge. And we all have to start somewhere. So just taking like that next right step and starting to tackle those things, it can make a huge difference in people's lives. It's incredible to see. I figure there's so much judgment and shame out there that like we don't need to bring that into this space.
Yeah, it
I
doesn't
have
help.
truly seen it all. I'm sure they would feel like if I was having one of my designer clients over to my house, where I would be so worried about what they would think, right? But just like I'm sure they have seen it all, I have truly seen it all. I'm not surprised and totally open to whatever they want to bring.
Right. Well, and that was one of the questions because we asked people to submit questions for you that we could start addressing in these monthly money talks that we're going to have. So every month there's going to be an episode that Jenn is going to be part of that will get released. We'll get into a regular cadence. We haven't quite figured out what week of the month that's going to be yet, but we asked people to submit questions. So if you are new to the podcast, I want to welcome you. I have a regular co-host that is often with me, Jonathan Duggar. And also now I will have a second regular guest, which will be Jenn Baas of Peak to Peak Solutions. And she will be doing her monthly money talks with me. So if you enjoy this and you get value from this, we do publish episodes every single week. So make sure you hit follow or subscribe. And if you specifically have a question that you would love Jenn to address around growing your business financially, anything in general around financials and the best way to handle certain things, make sure you submit those questions for us and then we can address them on future podcasts. So one of the things that someone specifically asked me was, how can I manage my mind around the shame that I do feel? Like I get that you've seen it all and we can say to people, I'm not going to judge you. But how does someone who is secretly suffering and feeling in shame about how their financials have been handled to this point, like what would you tell them? How can they manage their mind around that?
That is such a great question. And I think it's tricky because I think that we all have our own history and background with money and a lot of stories that go alongside of that. I think what can be helpful when talking about it is realizing that so many people feel exactly the same way. Most people, I think, that come to the conversation, some of them will even say, like, I'm probably the only person out here that feels this way or that struggles with this. I think we have this kind of cultural perception, especially in the social media age, right? Where we have like these successful businesses and these successful lives that we're portraying, and people don't really know what's behind the scenes. And so I think it's really helpful to understand that I would say 98% of the people who come to me carry some sort of shame or some sort of story or some sort of struggle around their finances that they expect nobody else also has. And if we could all just realize, hey, we all have this and nobody has it figured out, I think it takes off some of that pressure to be able to enter into that space.
All right. So given the number of businesses that fail, and I talked about this a few episodes ago, some statistics around business failure, and it's pretty high within 10 years. It's not as high, I think, as people think initially, but over time, it becomes a problem. And some of that has to do with growth, I think. So I think the point I'm trying to make is, given the number of businesses that do fail, a lot of them, it has to do with financials.
Yes. And even if they're not strictly failing, strictly going out of business, I think there's a massive number that are really struggling and where it just feels really, really hard and doesn't feel like they thought it would. And I think most of that tends to go back towards the financial side of things.
So even if it does not, it doesn't outright fail, it just becomes not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they may
Yeah.
even choose to close, like, this isn't worth it. I don't have the capacity for this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hope what someone who's feeling some shame around this is thinking is, A, you're definitely not alone. When you consider
Absolutely.
how many people, how many businesses do fail, you're absolutely not alone. And the more you continue to isolate yourself and tell yourself you're the only one and you're alone, the more you're going to hide away and not get yourself support and help that you need. And then I think the second thing is, which one do you want to be? Which category do you want to be in? Because sometimes until the pain of where you are becomes greater than the pain of change, you won't. But you're setting, if you continue to suffer in silence by yourself, then you seal your fate.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing that kind of ties in with that, and I actually just told a client this yesterday, it's very frequent that we have this conversation, is there's this perception that as business owners, we're also supposed to just totally understand how to run a business. And typically we didn't go to business school. Like the average person doesn't have an accounting degree or a finance degree or an MBA or any of those things. They open that business because they love what they do and they have that passion there. And then all of a sudden there's this expectation that they're also supposed to know how to run a business and understand their numbers and have strategy and build business plans and all of these things. And I think if we took some of that pressure off to say, hey, you're really gifted in that thing that you do, and it's reasonable to think that you don't know how to do this other thing, it makes it a little easier to reach out for help and say, this is just a skill gap and I don't have it. And maybe it's not the best use of my time to develop it per se. So let's bring on a team of people or a person to help support in that area. And I think that can help take some of that shame away.
Absolutely. Well, and that was my story.
Mm.
I won't go all the way into it because you can go back and listen to previous podcasts where I talked to Jenn about this whole transformation that I made. And it took several years of me coming to the realization of, I have a story. I'm not good with numbers. I feel very insecure around how I run my business behind the scenes versus doing what I do. That feels so easy.
Yeah.
And then hiring you and getting things really clean and then realizing I can understand what's in the reports and getting some really good hygiene, like financial hygiene.
Yeah.
Which is like good monthly practices, good business practices. And I have you for accountability around that. And it just made me realize how much, not only from, so I talk a lot about capacity and people having different capacities for their different aspects of their business, like how much time do they have, how much energy, how much do you manage your emotions? Do you get swept away? But there's also a capacity of financial capacity. And so I went to you and I said, I have this vision in coaching that it's not just about helping women with their emotional intelligence, their energetic alignment, and transforming what they believe in their brain about themselves, but that also we bring in some strategy around finance, some financial strategy. So I can work with you on the money mindset, like what you believe about money, but bringing the tangible pieces of helping to educate women on anything from the basic things of like profits and losses and statements and balance sheets to how you project what your business could potentially do this year, how you set goals based on personal goals of like making sure that you pay yourself appropriately. And so I went to you and I said, I really want you to be my financial capacity coach. So Jenn's going to be joining the Exponential Entrepreneur next year in the capacity of a financial capacity coach, helping the women in our group expand that component of their business and really get that under control, whether that means hiring a bookkeeper, making some tweaks to the bookkeeping that they're already doing, learning how to create financial capacity plans, which is how we expand and grow into the next year. So I'm really excited about that, Jenn.
I'm so excited. I'm honored that you asked me, and I think it's really going to be amazing. So yeah, I'm thrilled. Yeah.
Yeah. As you're listening to this, I'm running a training series for called the Capacity Series. And it's really introducing you to the components of capacity, how they affect your business, how you expand them, and running that. The series has already started when you hear this, but if you want to catch up, you can go to consciousedge.com/capacity. And that is one of the things we talk about is financial capacity and how that plays out. So that's another aspect of it, right? So let's talk about now growth for the sake of growth versus growth that actually makes sense for your business. So tell me, I see it. I see women set goals financially in their business for growth and then come up short repeatedly.
Yeah.
And it really rocks their confidence. And I don't think it's just women. I think any male listeners that we have as well, like they do the same thing, but it really rocks their confidence and it erodes their self-esteem every time they don't hit that goal.
Yes.
Speak into that a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is such a great topic and it's something that I see so consistently. I think there's two aspects to this when it comes to growth and goal setting. I think, first of all, we tend to set a really big goal of something that even might be in alignment of what we want to do and where we want to go, but we don't backfill that with a plan of how to get there. And we don't ask ourselves if it's reasonable within the time frame that we have set. Typically with entrepreneurs, and most especially with real estate entrepreneurs, right? Like they just have this big, vivacious, go get it kind of personality. And they set these really big goals because it's something that they want to achieve. And it's not necessarily connected to the reality of the current situation and the path that they have to get there. So that's one aspect that I see. The other aspect is that we're so hyper-focused as a culture just on growing. It's just kind of embedded in this expectation of like you open a business and what do? You grow. You add to your team or you grow revenue. And it's just kind of this thing that we're just kind of supposed to do. And we don't have a lot of process or qualifications around that. And so I think a lot of people get into that trap where they just think that they're supposed to be growing. And they're growing just for the sake of growth. And they're chasing that piece. And sometimes even they're chasing the growth just to make their business work. And so it becomes this endless hustle of we have to grow. And yet it's not necessarily connected to the health of their business. Or sometimes it's not even connected to their ultimate vision or goal for their business or their company. They're just doing it because they think they're supposed to do it, right? But that's what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to grow.
And there's a lot of messaging, right, around growth and growing your business to a certain dollar amount might be in your head. I think of like the first milestone for an entrepreneur is like grow your business to $1 million, right? Yeah. And then there's the next milestone of $5 million. And then it's $10 million and on and on and on. And so there's I don't want to say it's ego. I mean, it is in some ways, but it's really, you see these people that you really admire on social media and you see all the success that they're having because you're getting the highlight reel.
Yes.
And you're also getting the rose colored glasses because they oftentimes are someone who's mentoring or teaching other people how to do the strategy, the way that they created the business that they created. And so you follow them and you think I should want, or I want what they want, but you have no idea behind the scenes, like everything they went through to get to that.
Absolutely.
One. And then
how messy it might actually still be, right?
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. I mean, I've personally been on the inside of some companies where they are doing the coaching and they have the fancy events and they're doing the things. And from the outside, you would think it's amazing. And from the inside, it's an utter, total chaotic mess.
Yeah.
So they don't always go hand in hand.
Well, and when they talk about having like the $5 million company, there's a difference between that in revenue in the door and profitability.
100%. I would love to if it wasn't kind of invasive when people are like, I have a $5 million company. I'd be like, what do you make on that? Because that's really, I find much more interesting than just hitting a revenue number, right? I mean, of course, it takes a lot of effort and hard work. So I don't want to minimize getting to some of those bigger numbers, but I think we also idealize that. And we think if we just hit those big numbers, then everything's going to feel okay. But if we haven't cultivated a truly healthy whole business along the way, and we're just instead grinding it out to hit 5 million, we can produce this large revenue company that's not healthy and very likely isn't profitable and very likely has a lot of dysfunction internally. And then the business owner feels like this is so much work and it's a huge struggle and it's a huge grind. And I'm probably not making as much money as I should, all of those things. And yet we've hit this pinnacle of this growth goal and it just doesn't feel or look like we think it's going to feel like.
Yeah. And even to of how much debt that they carry.
Whew, yeah. Mm-hmm.
We've already got some future episodes planned around like how you identify dysfunction in your business and how do you know if you are experiencing, right? Because there's a certain level of discomfort, growing pains, as you call it.
Yes.
And then there's what you call like disordered growth, like not healthy growth.
Absolutely.
So we're going to get into those in future episodes as well. But so there's that piece, right? Where you've got this image of what growth is supposed to look like. And then you're not seeing the reality behind the scenes. And on top of it, people are walking around with big assumptions. Jenn's very familiar with my big assumptions. But if you've never heard, for those who are new, if you've never heard me talk about a big assumption, this is based on a methodology that I use, Immunity to Change. And it's a methodology that I'm certified in. And essentially, you have certain beliefs about yourself and the way the world works and what happens if you do something or something happens, the bad outcomes that happen. And so many people are walking around with conversations of not enough, especially entrepreneurs. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. It's like something not enough. And so when we talk about growth just for the sake of growth, it's like you've set this benchmark of what you think is good enough. And then you don't have maybe well, let me ask you, what do you need to get to those growths? What do you need to get to those kinds of numbers? What are you asking yourself as you're evaluating someone's business a little bit and you're saying to them, like, what is this real growth or is this just a stab in the dark?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of times what we're looking for when I think about growing a healthy business that grows in size is where that growth is more of an outcome versus a goal. And it seems like a nuanced little shift because I also don't think that it's wrong to want to grow a big business, right? Like I love the entrepreneurial spirit and I think it's amazing to grow big businesses. But when we focus just on that growth for the sake of growth, it tends to lead towards a very messy internal growth, right? So there's typically things are not functioning great. So we've got financial pieces that are out of order or team dysfunction or things that aren't in alignment. Maybe we're not operating in alignment with the company values, those sorts of things. That internal chaos is what it's going to feel like. Whereas when I really think about what's a healthy company, it's like, what is this company that has the right orders and boundaries around everything? And it's growing this really healthy business. And then that just kind of overflows on its own. And by nature, there's growth that occurs out of the health of that business. And so that's what I tend to look for when I'm trying to ascertain, like, is this a company that's just chasing? And even if they don't think that they are, there's just so much disorder behind it that that's kind of what they're getting.
Mm-hmm.
Versus a company that's really more focused on how do we create this beautiful, healthy, dynamic living business. And then as a byproduct of that, it grows and magnifies and becomes larger.
So building really strong foundations.
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that you have in place when you have healthy growth?
I think, on the financial side, like I get so excited when I have a brand new business that comes to me and wants to get everything set up on the financial side from the get-go. That I think is amazing because it's showing a forward thinking of let's get these things in place now when we can play with the processes and get things dialed in and then be prepared for the growth that's coming. And so I think that's the key thing, whether you're talking about it in terms of the financial arena or in operations or your sales processes or anything like that, investing the time when you're small and you have the time and the capacity to figure out what works well and what doesn't. A lot of times we tend to like just jump right in. We're like, we're just going to do this business thing and it's going to be amazing. And then you just start doing and you're just doing and you're doing and you're doing. But if we can take the time at the beginning to say, what are we crafting and what does it need to look like? And what are these foundational pieces that we can put into place? And then that lets us add on to that as we get bigger and lets it grow in a more ordered way and a more structured way versus the ones that a lot of times, and it's okay. It's not that there's a lot of creative enjoyment on my side for the ones that come to me very disordered because I get to sort it all out. But if we think about taking the time and sometimes the money to invest on the front end, it actually ends up saving a lot of time and money than coming to me or somebody like me in 10 years. And it's a disaster and we have to unwind and fix and heal all of these parts that aren't working. So I think that's the biggest differentiator I see from the ones that can kind of grow methodically and holistically from the get-go. They have invested the time and the effort and the money on the front end in really creating a solid foundation for what they want their company to be.
So what is the money that they're investing that creates the solid fit and foundation? Like, give me the components that you're looking at.
Yeah, sometimes it's just like the money and investing in accountings. It could be something as simple as that, right? Like I want a bookkeeper from the get-go, or I want somebody to at least advise me on how to set this up correctly. I want to have a good tax partner. So there could be aspects like that. Maybe it's not even on the money strictly, but it's like, I'm going to take the time. So I'm going to choose to move slow and make less money along the way because I really want to make sure that we do this in the right way first. It could be investing in coaching or something if you feel like you have a skill gap to really fill that, or a skill gap that you might fill with an employee. So sometimes there's that investment at the get-go that we have to plan for, right? So that does come with planning just around being able to afford those things. And it doesn't always have to come with a huge financial outlay, but it's more about that focus and that planning around the beginning that I think really structures things for the future.
And then one of the things that happens when we have chased growth for the sake of growth is you get into, I want you to talk a little bit more about, it's like growth that is necessary to make the business sustainable.
Yes.
I don't think I'm describing it really well, but I think you know what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. Like sometimes there is a reality to the business only works at a certain scalability, right? Like you're going to start out, you're going to have these startup costs, or you're just going to have a certain level of overhead associated with running a business, right? That just to keep the lights on, it costs X dollars a month. And there's going to be a point until you reach like that break even on the revenue side where it's going to be a struggle. So there is a reality to, there are just a basic level of revenue that you're going to have to bring in order to keep the lights on, pay yourself, pay the people. And that is something that we have to solve with some growth, because that's kind of growth in the right way where we say it's more of a math problem. Here's the expenses and the things that we've identified are necessary at this point, and we have to make sure that we can hit a revenue goal in order to keep all of those things in place or we have to make a different decision about some of those expenses. So there is a little bit of a math piece and just a little bit of a reality to it of like, if we want these things to be true, we are probably going to have to hit a certain revenue goal in order to accomplish that. And that I think is a little bit different than just saying, we just need to hit $5 million for the sake of 5 million, right? So that's kind of the difference between
because then
those.
we'll feel enough.
Right.
Yes.
And
then
there
we'll
are
be good.
some companies where scalability is where you find, like, I think especially in food service and things like that, where you find efficiency at quantity. So there are some companies that do work that way. We think that there's more of those than there are. Oftentimes, one of the ways I see growth creeping in a negative way is when it becomes this automatic solution for every problem we have. So I've sat in meetings and things where it's like, oh, we have this problem. We're short here. We can't cover this. We just need to grow. That might be the case. And sometimes, again, that is the case. But sometimes it's because there's some inherent flaws somewhere else that we need to be solving in order to fix that problem.
Right. Which we're going to dive into in our next episode, that monthly money talks with Zen Jenn. We're going to talk about the identifying the dysfunctions before you grow.
Yes.
I have some questions that I'm definitely going to ask around hiring in that particular episode. We had some questions come in around hiring and removing some bottlenecks. So I'll make sure that I remember to ask those as well. But the biggest thing I think that I take away from this is that you shift from growth being the goal to being healthy, building a healthy, sustainable business, having the right things in place, planning for the future, taking the time to learn and understand what metrics to even look at. And actually, that's a good question for us to give people some tangibles. Is that the growth is a byproduct of a healthy business.
Yes.
And I love your analogy of, you talk about a tree and how can you give that visual for people? Because I think that really demonstrates it really well.
Absolutely. So if people can picture seeing a really big tree out here in Colorado, we have cottonwoods that I think are just really beautiful. And occasionally you'll see a tree that's very large in size, but maybe a portion of it is dead or has some dead branches, some diseased sections. And so we have size, but we don't necessarily have overall health of that tree. And I'm also from the Midwest. If anybody has had one of those trees near their house, they know that that house is at risk of being smashed in a storm when that diseased tree might encounter some high winds, right? Because there's that weakness there that makes it really susceptible to coming down. And if we think about a really big diseased tree, the impact of it falling apart is magnified, right? If a little tree falls over, it's not such a big deal. But if a really big tree falls apart, it tends to cause a lot of destruction. And so when we think about just growing a really big business, and we don't think about how healthy that business is, I want people to think about that picture in their heads, is they might have something that's impressive and looks amazing on social media because they're only showing you like the 4 limbs that are alive, right? But if you really could look internally and see the vulnerabilities and the fissures and the fractures and the pieces that aren't working properly, you get a much fuller picture of what they've really cultivated. And then if we think about that from more of a growth in health mindset, we might have a smaller tree, but a smaller tree that is really healthy. Maybe it's a lower growth plan, right? So it starts as a smaller tree. It's super healthy. Maybe it gets a little bit bigger and it's still, again, really healthy. That's like all these beautiful leaves on it. Maybe the next phase, it actually might get a little smaller, but now it's starting to bloom. I know a real tree actually doesn't get smaller, so don't come for me. But in theory, if we're thinking about it as a business, maybe the actual size gets smaller, but everything's getting even healthier and more productive and it's flowering.
Well, I think about, what if you cut off all those dead branches?
Ooh,
and
maybe it's a
you like
pruning.
prune it
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and you treat the disease, the dysfunction, and
Yeah.
then there's a period
Maybe
of
then it
time,
gets smaller.
slow growth.
Mm-hmm. Yes. In that case, it could come back if you're kind of rehabilitating that
Mhm.
tree, or if it's one thing that's you're just growing healthy over time. I think the main thought here is that if we could end up with a smaller tree that is healthier and more beautiful and more vibrant and
More
is
fruitful.
giving more fruitful, is giving
Mhm.
more than a really big tree that's half dead.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's really powerful. So we're kind of at time here, but here's a question that came in is, how do you be okay when you're the business owner
Mm-hmm.
and you're looking at your numbers and you're feeling some sort of way about them and it's not good?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
How do you manage your mind around that?
I think there's the initial reaction of not liking them in some way. So let's say that we're missing a revenue goal or sales are smaller. I think where to take it that kind of shifts you out of just like, oh, these are terrible and it feels awful, is to ask the deeper question, which is what isn't working or what problem do we have that we need to work on solving? So it takes us out of the mindset of like, this is just happening to us and into an empowered space of this is really just an indicator that something isn't working quite right. And if we listen to that indicator, we then shift into an empowered position of we can actually change this.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of revenue, it could be so many things. It could be an advertising problem or a funnel or a sales issue. There's so many things that if we can take a step back from that immediate emotional reaction and then ask what's underneath this, and then what do we have the power to affect, it shifts us from that position of thinking this is happening to us versus we're in the driver's seat and we can make different decisions and changes in order to help affect that.
Yeah, I love that. And it makes me think of, I remember you and I had a conversation, I think it was back in first quarter, when there was some revenue that was supposed to come in and it didn't. And your question for me was, would you like me to put in as though it did? Or do you want me to put it where it actually comes in? Because by doing that, it was going to throw off our budgeting numbers. It was going to make it like first quarter, we came up short from what we budgeted or what we planned for. And I told you, I was like, no, let the numbers show the reality. Because when I'm willing to look at the reality of what is happening and then explain either this is what's happening and that's not going to be a problem going into the next quarter, or this is what's happening and I need to make a different plan. When we hide it because we don't want to deal with it and look with it and like it makes us feel bad about what we see on the spreadsheet, you're just pulling the wool over your eyes. You're just not really looking at it. So that's one of the things that I really like because it allows me to look internally and say, what feeling am I having about this? What can I do about this? Where does my thinking need to change about this? And I think it makes me a stronger business owner. It's that healthy growth because we're being real about it.
Right. And I actually encounter this a lot where when the numbers don't look good, people don't want to look at them. And from a human aspect, I get it. Like none of us want to look and see our failures or see what we perceive to be our failures. That can be really challenging. So I try to be careful with that. If it's really going to send somebody in a spiral, I'll figure out a different way to go there. But if we can have that gentle honesty and that gentle accountability, it allows us to actually change the dynamic of what's happening. And I think a lot of people think that they don't have control over it. And certainly it's not easy. It's not like we have a magic wand and we can just be like, make sales bigger. But if you're willing to take that honesty and then go deeper and dig a little bit more, that's what actually ends up helping find those diseased parts of the tree, right? Find the things that aren't working. And it's hard and it's gritty. I mean, if anybody's ever had to chop out dead branches in a tree, we did that this summer, and I was lifting up my husband with the bucket of the tractor and a chainsaw, right? A little dangerous, a little sketchy, a little bit hard, but ultimately makes that tree healthier and better. And so if you can be willing to do that work and not be so scared of just looking at it, but actually go underneath the hood, so to speak, find what's not working, then you can really change the dynamic of the company as a whole. And it's really empowering to look at it that way.
And it can be strategic.
Mm-hmm.
And it can also be a leadership quality, like one of the other capacities, like an emotional capacity, an energetic capacity, which means something's out of alignment. And that's why the marrying of what you're doing, because you and I have talked so often about we expose the same things from different angles.
Yeah, because they're so interrelated, right? You look at somebody who's in this financial crisis, and that's affecting their emotional capacity and all of these other things, and vice versa. It's so cool.
And sometimes their capacity energetically, like with the alignment of what they're doing or their time capacity and the fact that they haven't hired someone and they are the bottleneck, that is creating the financial limitations.
Absolutely.
So they're so interlinked. And that's why I think you and I are so excited to partner and do more on this, because now instead of it just being about mindset work and deep transformation to be the leader that has the capacity to hold your success and hold your business, but now there's another layering in of financial capacity where we look at the strategic, tactical pieces that you want to be leading in your business and business strategy as well. Between you and I, we've got a lot of business strategy. So I'm saying 2026, there are some entrepreneurs that are going to get like two powerhouse coaches together, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Super impactful.
Jenn, I'm excited for our next monthly money talk with Zen Jenn.
Me too. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm really excited to be involved.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. So with all of that being said, everyone, I'm sending you so much love. If Jonathan were here, he would say, be well. Thanks for listening to the Conscious Edge podcast. Make sure you subscribe and take a moment to be kind and share this episode with someone you care about. Leave a review to help us bring more compassionate leaders building businesses and creating wealth to the table. And for show notes, head over to consciousedge.com/podcast. This podcast and the linked materials are presented solely for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes and should not be taken as personal or medical advice or any kind of mental health treatment. Please consult a medical or mental health professional if you feel you need such services. Please be advised that all investing and entrepreneurial endeavors involve risk, and the use of the education and information on this podcast and linked materials is at the user's own risk.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.